So Steve, you get paid a lot of money to learn to build houses, to learn how to build houses.
It's enough money, but
Because we were
if
just
there's
talking
ever enough,
offline. Because it's funny. Because this happens a lot with a lot of my guests. And I'll give you an example. Like the black belt that I learned under for jiu-jitsu, I think he's been a black belt for over 17 years.
right?
So the highest level of expertise for 17 years, something like that. And he even says, I only know half.
Right.
Right? So he knows more than most people will ever know, yet he says he only knows half.
Right. And he's still not necessarily confident.
Oh no, he'll beat the hell out of all of us.
Yeah, of course. But,
Give him 30 seconds, we don't stand a chance.
but he still knows there's more to learn as well.
But he knows there's more to learn. And,
Right.
But, on this call, for my podcast listeners, I don't know if anyone's done more than one build versus you've done over 800.
Right. Well, no, I've definitely been through the process many times. Working for like a large volume builder, I've kind of done it all from excavation to handing the keys over to the homeowner, including actually after handing the keys over, I spent a few years doing customer service. So that was where actually I learned a lot about the issues of new houses, whereas it's not like you're buying a new car. It's all made out of natural materials. So your concrete's drying, it's shrinking, your wood is drying and warping. So a new home is not necessarily the same thing as a new car.
Right, because new cars, almost everything's synthetic.
Right.
And made with machines.
Right. So when you start getting things drying, concrete curing, everything's going to do what it wants to do. Concrete cracks, studs warp, drywall, you get nail pops. So there's always something. So that was a huge surprise from kind of getting into new construction, was seeing that no matter whether you're building a $5 million house or a $200,000 bungalow, you're still going to come across some of the same problems.
So how many years did it take you to build 800 houses?
Well, the job I've been at now, I've been at for about 12 and a half years. So starting with my first site being, I think it was about 118 units. That'd be like towns. Actually, it was all towns, the first 118. So each season we're doing anywhere from lowest quantity was about 68 up to about 236. So over the past 12 years, it's just been subdivision after subdivision, phase after phase. And that's, you can collect them, your count pretty good when you're building that many.
How long does it take to finish a phase roughly? And then what's the longest project you've done then? 5 phases? 8 phases?
Because I've started a site in Vaughan. I did the first 2 phases. I left for 2 phases while someone built. And then I came back and it was on the 4th phase by then. So each phase is usually about a year. And it's just all depending on how the builder releases the lots. You might have actually one phase last a couple years, just depending on sales.
What are some of the challenges of being a builder? First thing that comes to mind, well, 2 things come to mind is the raising cost of materials, and it seems like there's a labor shortage these days.
Big time.
For all trades.
Yeah, that is probably one of the bigger ones. Obviously, yes, the cost of land, the cost of developing land, as well as the cost of building these houses. Fortunately, the past many years, they've been able to sell out full sites at a time. So you're not necessarily building on spec. But so that helps with everything. But shortage of manpower, that's what we're coming across these days. A lot of trades, it's really hard work. So it's hard to get younger people, millennials, etc., to go dig in a hole, to work in the mud for 10 hours, to wake up at 5, to come home at 7 and repeat for 5 days in a row, sometimes 6, 7 days in a row. So it's a very tough job, with, like the technology jobs that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
People are able to work in their living room, and don't actually have to necessarily work as physically hard. So it's hard getting younger people into it.
Right.
There's less trade schools. There's less of a push of getting younger people into these positions.
Right. Especially when people on YouTube are selling how to be YouTubers
100%.
and how they can make money just
Opening a box.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
It's not
but
as
yeah,
easy as people
so,
think. Do you, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Do you remember what the prices were when you started for, say, a house?
Oh gosh. Not right when I started, but there's one moment I really specifically, it was 2013. They were releasing singles, semis, and some towns in Kleinburg, which when you hear the name Kleinburg, it's very ritzy. They were releasing singles, about a 30-foot lot for about $600,000. Now that was 2013. I remember thinking, I wish I could beg, borrow, steal whatever money I could to get one. I didn't. As of 2017, they were like peaking, but now that $600,000 house is easily 1.2, and that's just in the last 5-6 years.
Okay.
So that was with the huge appreciation of 2016, 2017, but yeah, that would have been a great time, but easy to say now.
Even with post correction, we're probably still low one. Maybe like $1,050,000.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Easy.
Yeah. So anyone who's not good at math, that'd be an easy $450,000 for not doing a heck of a lot.
Right. And a lot of these people rented them out. Yeah. So a lot of these buyers, they're buying on spec. So the last year, year and a half, there's actually people that have bought and actually have gotten hurt because of it. That's the risk you're playing.
Yeah, that is the risk.
So we've seen houses being purchased for 1.2 and they're getting their appraisal now and it's coming in at 1.
Yeah.
So they're responsible to come up for that remaining 200,000.
Right. That is the challenge, but if you did it right, just think how long it takes to put away $450,000.
Yeah, without doing much.
Do you have any idea what the cost per square foot was back then?
Oh gosh. Well, there's a big difference between cost per square foot for a builder.
Yeah.
A large volume builder.
Yeah.
Cost per square foot for a medium size and a small scale developer. I hate to even throw numbers because, it's not realistic to the average person.
Right. I just want some scale though. Because I want the listener to understand how much costs have gone up. So what, maybe percentage wise, how much do you think the costs have gone up from 2013 to present day per square foot?
Gosh.
30%, 50%, 10%?
The land, I think, has gone up more than the cost of materials. For the most part, the labor, for the most part, I mean, we're using all union trades. So there's been about 2 contracts since then. So depending on the trade, they've gone up to 20, 30%. Some trades are still stuck behind by only going up 10 to 20%. Overall, on the cost per square foot on the house, I would say the construction cost has gone up anything, maybe the 15, 20%.
That's not too.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. It depends where you're building, what you're building. Are you building the GTA? Are you building outside of the GTA? It's a hard question to answer.
Right. But 10, 15, you're thinking ballpark 15 to 20% just labor.
Just the labor. Yeah. And then your cost of lumber on a good year, it's cheaper than it is. I believe this year it's a little bit cheaper than it was last year. So it all depends on the commodity.
Right. It's all fascinating. Okay. So with the way real estate's gone, it's funny because I was talking to my team about this earlier about how, like, you remember, like when did you buy your first investment property?
Well, my first investment property was actually the first house I purchased in 2011.
Oh, good for you.
Um, yeah, so I was 246,000. And then I've actually been fortunate enough to be able to refi that thing 3 times. So I think I put 20,000 down when I bought it. That was just money I've saved, and I haven't used a penny of my own money to buy 3 other houses.
Right.
So I've been very fortunate with that.
Sorry, you bought, so one house turned into 3 houses?
Correct. Just based off appreciation.
Okay.
And mortgage pay down, obviously.
Okay, so if listeners, just think 246,000. Do you remember what your first rent was?
I started it at, I think, 1450.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a single detached in Cambridge. So started at the 1450, and now the market rent is in and around 2100, 2200.
Right. And what's it worth today, do you think? The first
It's
property.
worth in about 500 right now.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
So it's done a double.
not bad. And actually, I just got a recent appraisal for a house I had in Brantford. It's 3 years. It was a rent to own. They didn't actually end up going through, but so I recently had it refinanced. I was set to sell it actually at 354, but it just got recently appraised at 416.
Steve, these are good numbers.
Those are great numbers. I bought it at 305.
So just to go back to your first property,
Yeah.
assuming 20% down, you paid 246. So let's use rough numbers. So you're down your closing costs a little bit over 50 grand
Well, actually, it wasn't even. I put 5% down on that one.
because you're living in it.
Yeah, I initially bought it as a principal residence.
Got it. Okay, let's assume 20, just because
Okay.
that's what everyone else
Math.
has to do.
No problem.
Actually, probably. Yeah, back then it was still 20, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, back then it was still 20 for investment property. So you would have put down like 50 or so, including closing costs, and then you're saying it's worth like 500. So you got like a 5 times return.
Not bad.
5 times return, folks,
Right. In 8 years.
in 8 years. But then the point to my team was, based on today's value. So you're saying it's like 21 to 2200 rent. So
Yeah.
the rent to price is not nearly as attractive as it was. Hence, we're all doing more aggressive strategies, such
Right.
as suiting basements.
Right. Because you can't really, it's really hard to cash flow
Right.
a single family home at this point.
Right. Because around 2011, even 5 years ago, we were able to do single family and cash flow and break even cash flow a little bit.
Right.
And then we all were doing multifamily. And then things got tighter. Cities got more regulated. So they're all cracking down on all the non-conforming stuff. So then, then the next phase was student rental. Everyone was doing student rental. Student rental is not the easiest though, because it's very active management. And then we all once basements become legal, everyone's now doing basement apartments.
Conversions. Yeah.
But then what's the next iteration?
Well,
Right?
that's kind of where I've kind of jumped on, is getting into kind of a newer investment strategy, is almost building your own investment property, or more development, and that's be it as severing a existing lot, building on it, or even severing it and selling that lot off.
So can we talk to your current project? It's almost wrapped up, isn't it?
Yeah, the Violet Street. We just did an open house this past weekend, which you were a part of.
Great pictures, by the way.
Thank you. Actually, they were really good.
Yeah, your headshots look great.
Yeah.
So what was it? What was the property that you acquired?
Okay, so that project specifically, I was actually hired as a construction consultant. So I was not an equity partner in that. So my two partners actually purchased 2 side-by-side houses. One's a corner lot, and then the next house in. And because of the 2 properties, the adjacent street, they were able to sever the backyard and create a new lot, which was actually big enough to create a semi-detached, so a left side and a right side. So they've and of that semi, we've actually put in 2 basement secondary suites. So they've basically turned 2 single family houses into 7 separate units, because one of the existing houses is actually a duplex as well.
So you took 3 units, 2 houses, 3 units, and turned it to 7.
Correct.
What did you build?
So we built a semi-detached. So like I said, it's a left side and a right side. So it's a 2-story.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a ground floor, a second floor, and then it's actually a purpose-built secondary suite. So there's actually no staircase from inside the main level going down to the basement.
Mm-hmm.
The only access to the basement is through the side of the house and a stairwell going down. So from day one, it was designed as a secondary suite.
What are some of the differences in the separation requirements in a new construction versus the more common retro, like houses from the 50s? Typically, most investors are using houses from the 50s and 60s to create basement suites. What's the difference in the Ontario building code?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things is the code differences. So the renovated conversion, you're under Part 11, which deals with renovations. When you're doing a new build secondary suite, you're required to go under Part 9, which is all your new housing, and everything's a lot more restrictive in Part 9. So you have to have everything up to 2019 code versus you can get by with a little bit less work in a conversion. Now, by doing it from the start of the build, it's not as bad because you know what you're getting into. Mm-hmm. On the plans, it's to Part 9. As you're building it, you're still, all the trades are following the most recent code. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's more restrictive, but as long as you're planning it properly, it shouldn't be that much of a difference.
Mm-hmm. Now, put your builder hat back on from your day job.
Okay.
Would you want to be doing these? Could you imagine doing 800 basement suites?
Well,
how much longer it would take?
That's one thing. You don't, or at least in the GTA, you don't see any high volume or medium volume builder doing secondary suites, let alone finished basements. It's very rare, and it just comes down to the amount of extra time, the amount of extra effort. Mm-hmm. And it's not worth it for the builder to do it.
Right.
The amount of pain is not worth the little amount of financial gain.
Right. Because my experience is when you buy new construction. My experience is when you buy new construction is any sort of upgrade is very expensive. I almost get the point that the builder wants a certain margin to have their labor do more effort. And they'd rather be building more houses rather than renovate the house to the level that you want it at.
Completely. Now, there's multiple reasons for that. For one, obviously, it is business. But the one thing people always look at, and they always say builders' prices are so inflated, but they're comparing it to on-sale hardwood at Home Depot or on-sale vinyl flooring at Lowe's. Mm-hmm. They're not including the installation fee, mm-hmm. But there's also the convenience factor. So say you can get granite from a friend, you're going to do it after. You really have to keep in mind that, okay, you're going to move into your new house, you're going to move your family in. All of a sudden, which kitchen are you going to use? Because you have to take out the old countertops. Mm-hmm. You have to get someone in to template it. Mm-hmm. And then it usually takes from 5 to 7 days to get a new countertop in there. Mm-hmm. In the meantime, you have to disconnect your kitchen plumbing. So for about a week or so, you're kind of in limbo. Mm-hmm. And then you still have to do your touch-ups and everything after. So people look just at the price, mm-hmm. but they really need to take into account the convenience factor right. as well.
Have any of these builds, has it been available to the customer to actually buy a basement suite from the builder?
I've never seen it. Yeah. I've heard of some builders doing finished basements, or some builders will give you an option to get the exterior entrance,
right.
Which I used to think it was anything in the $10,000 to $12,000 range, but now I've seen prices are up in the $20,000 to $25,000 range. Yeah.
Wow.
So
in my experience, I only see from the builder basement suites usually in much further away from the GTA locations.
Right.
Like, coming close to like 90 minutes away from Toronto, or in like Alberta where the market's much slower. the builders having
Right.
to come
That's
up with.
exactly. There's just not that necessity for the builder to provide it, or maybe there's not even that much demand.
I'd be surprised. I would think the demand is there. Like it helps so much with affordability, even with getting financing.
Right.
And I'm seeing more and more articles about people having to share space with family for side hustle. It's becoming a common term. I don't know if it's a common term. I started hearing this about 2 weeks ago. It's called house hacking. Have you heard of that?
Yeah. Bigger Pockets guys always talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't listen to their podcast. I spend enough time talking about real estate.
No, absolutely. You don't need to listen to more, and it's all American stuff. Right. But, it's just, for a builder, especially a production builder, you're just adding time, effort, energy to the build, and it's just not necessary.
Right. And it seems, and I'm always hearing how, deliveries are late. So if you have deadlines to meet, you probably want to be applying those resources to meeting those deadlines versus doing accessory work for a client.
Right.
Who's already bought and paid.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge difference between a good large volume builder and not so good.
Right.
A lot of them are pretty the same in the quality because everyone's following building code. Some builders are using different methods to do that, but the biggest thing with a production builder is your customer service after closing, and the closing date. Are they going to push you back? So if you are buying production, you just want to kind of find out the company's history about if they ever delay. The company I work with, only recently have they had to delay, and that was just due to infrastructure. There were some pipes that had to get under the 401.
Right.
They've been waiting for 18, 20 months to actually get under there. And that's the only reason they had to delay. Other than that, any of my sites, I think there's only been like three or four closings delayed, and that was just due to weather.
So a couple points I want to go back over. You mentioned everything's pre-selling. Have you seen any issues with the sales of your properties?
Well, actually, they've done some openings the past, say, 3 months, and they've been selling probably 80 to 100 each weekend. So that's between Brampton. They sold around 60 or 70 in Vaughan. And then out in Whitby, they sold, I think, another 100 and change. So the demand is back out there.
Holy.
Yeah. So I think prices were adjusted.
Yeah.
You have to be careful because you can't release the same product or the same model a year later for $200,000 less, because the guy who bought it last year is not going to be too happy. But if you're building new product on a new site, they can actually adjust it, and I think that's why they've been able to sell more. But there's actually been a change in product as well. So they're not selling the 3,600 square foot 5-bedroom homes. They're selling the 3-4 bedroom 3-story townhouses. It's the dense product versus the larger stuff.
And they're still selling, no problem.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to give some context to how much stuff you're talking about is selling. So you said in a weekend they sold 160 units or something?
And it was up to about 100.
About 100 units.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one weekend, folks.
Yeah.
In a whole month, in all of Hamilton, we did 877 units. So, based on your run rate, you would sell somewhere around 400 in a month if you had that much to sell.
Right.
So you could sell 400 probably potentially, entire city of Hamilton with a population of 500,000, 877 units.
With the newer price adjustments, you could. But again, this is all new construction in your main cores of Brampton, Vaughan, and Whitby.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that the listeners get this part. So you're saying prices have gone up, land's gone up, labor's gone up, materials have all gone up. Prices have adjusted from the correction of early 2017 from the Housing Fairness Plan.
Yeah,
yet you're selling 100 units in a weekend.
Right.
Of high dense, not super high dense, but townhouses, mostly
mainly towns, still semis, still some singles.
So, and understand, folks, usually people, if you ask somebody, they want a detached home. they choose something else because of affordability.
Right.
But you're still getting sales. And then folks take away from that, this is today is June something, late June.
Yeah.
This is after interest rates have gone up, and this is after the the stress tests, and there's considerable demand.
Right. And I think some of the companies are surprised at that because even our construction program for next year was supposed to be, say, 3 sites, and we're doing 4. So I think even the builders are surprised at the demand.
Right. Oh, we had someone come in from Portland Mortgages into our office today, and fixed mortgages have actually, the 5-year fix is actually below the variable right now.
Crazy.
Yeah. So there's more cheap money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
harder to borrow once you're getting into the higher numbers.
Harder to borrow.
But if you are qualified, the money is there.
And it's cheaper.
Right.
And that just gives you an overall, and I want the listener to understand, I always like to talk to people who have who are involved with any sort of business that gives me an indication of the economy. For example, a friend of mine, he's the vice president of several car dealerships, right? New cars.
Okay.
New cars is a wonderful indicator of how the economy is doing.
Right.
People who lease new cars are usually quite confident in they're bullish, right? You wouldn't get a new car otherwise. So
right.
I'm always asking people like that, people like yourself, how the market is going.
No, it's a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause, you'd be a leading indicator. If you have no sales, then hang on, folks.
People are cautious. Exactly.
Yeah. I would be cautious, right?
Yeah.
But if you're telling me there's all this demand, even with everything that's going against the investor, harder to borrow.
Yeah. They're still selling.
Yeah. Crazy. Let's continue with Violet, actually. So.
Okay.
There's something else I wanted to cover, but yeah. Continue with Violet, though.
Okay.
So you built 2 semis, brand new. What are some things that the new investor has to look out for? Because for example, there was a podcast out recently. We won't name names or anything like that, but it was a newer investor. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was a newer investor who's doing a development, sharing their experiences, right? But people like that, they don't know what they don't know. What would you tell a new investor who's building for the first time? What are some of the things they need to look out for?
Well, being a guy who's built many houses or been a part of building many houses, even going to this infill Violet project, I was even nervous at times. So I can't imagine somebody without 12 years at a builder. I can't imagine what they were thinking. I believe very confident. I appreciate the confidence they had, and you know what? No risk, no reward. But it is a very high risk, especially we started excavating late November, so you're dealing with a lot of unknowns. We were very lucky in the terms of the weather, but for the unknown builder or the inexperienced investor, I wouldn't recommend doing it if you don't have experience in construction.
Or hiring someone with experience with construction.
Yeah, you need to hire somebody. There's people out there that do consulting. But I mean, you have to do your cost comparison between trying to do it yourself and hiring a builder. If this is your first time, you're not going to be getting the best labor rates. You're not going to be getting the best material rates. So your cost might be similar to hiring a builder. And if you need to put 2-3 days a week of time on site, are you able to do that with a full-time job? If you don't have a full-time job, you know what? Maybe it's something you can tackle with the right support, but I definitely wouldn't go at it alone. And if you have very little experience, I wouldn't even dare touch it.
Right.
I would hire a builder.
I've had friends even say it took a year off their life.
Right. I used to have hair before I started doing houses, but no, it's certain days are stressful, but there was one day in specific that my partners there, Andy and Charles, and I think you were there too. You guys were out on a cruise.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah. So
You were on site.
I'm on site. It's the middle of, I think it was, like I said, late November.
Yeah. Weather was miserable.
Awful. Just
not for us, for
freezing
you.
cold. For me, I remember getting there in the morning, like 6:30, pulling the tarps off the footings, starting to clean the footings. We were very unknown with the St. Catharines building department. And the one trouble with that is the timing. Where I'm used to building, Brampton, Vaughan, Markham, Mississauga, they're all pretty generous. If they know you're pouring concrete, they'll give you a bit of a time frame. But we couldn't get in touch with the inspectors.
And this is not stuff you can delegate, right?
No, I had to, again, I'm usually the one sitting at the top of the hill, but today I was the one in the hole. I had a crew of guys with me, and we were, the problem was, as the sun was shining, the ice was melting. So we were cleaning these footings, but water keeps coming in. So it was very stressful. So it got to the point where the concrete pump, which is $400 plus an hour with a minimum charge of 4 hours, because it's their drive there, their drive back, setup, and so on. So we had concrete on the way. You can't cancel concrete once it's ordered. So at that point, we were waiting on the inspector. He was supposed to be there for around 1. He finally showed up around 3.
Oh!
Luckily, the concrete didn't come that early, because after a little while, the concrete's no good. Or at least you don't want to be putting it in your footings. So it was to the point where I'm losing my mind, because if the inspector fails this footing, I now have to reschedule the pump, reschedule the concrete. You have to pay for the pump. You have to pay for the concrete. And then this is, like I said, these guys hired me to help them build. So I don't want to lose $2,000-$3,000 of their money on one of the first days. But no, fortunately, it was a lot of hard work, but I kind of busted my butt that day. But we got it passed. We got it poured. And you guys were enjoying the sunshine on the cruise.
And we're breaking. They're not here to defend themselves, but I know Charles and Andy.
You were stressed.
They were stressed, but also Charles especially is on site quite often.
Yeah. No, both of the guys are, and we made a really good team by. We were fortunate to split up the time on site between 3 people. Where if you're a new investor and you want to go at this, if you can't be there, you need somebody there. But I really stress that if you have no experience in construction, it's not something you just want to jump into. Maybe do your first one with a builder, learn from there, and then tackle it 1 or 2 down the road by yourself.
Right. Because when I hear experience in new construction, I want the listener to understand there's experience like actually understanding what construction looks like, what people are supposed to be doing, but there's also managing trades.
Managing people.
But I could be wrong. You tell me. But, I come from a corporate background. I worked at Big Blue for many years. You wrote an email. That's all you had to do to get someone to do something to work, someone to get someone to do some work, right?
Yeah.
And then if they didn't do it, you just resend the email and CC to the boss. And then for sure that work's getting done, right? That work gets done.
Hey, to be fair, I do that sometimes. I mean, sometimes you got to.
But can you do that with your tradespeople?
100%.
That works just as well?
Even with when you start CCing, say the owner of the company or the supervisor, you got to be careful because you can burn bridges that way.
You
don't want to piss off the guy too much, but if they're not coming through, and the best thing you can do is get the owner involved, because the last thing they want to do is lose a contractor, lose a builder. It's hard enough to get into a builder. It's impossible if you ever lose a builder to get back in.
Right. But for the small investor, though, do you have this kind of leverage on people?
None.
Because I know some of the stories that happen. You guys have had materials that magically grew legs and walked away.
Yeah. But no, it's true. Just in terms of the trades, the plumber, is he going to go to the builder that's building 200 houses and keeping him busy for the last 10 years, or is he going to come see these younger guys building a semi in an hour away? So you have to schedule accordingly. You have to assume they're not going to come when they want you to come. And that's where, fortunately, my experience has been able to help us with that, is not assuming it's going to be done the day, scheduling the guy maybe 2 days later, just so you have some backup, and calling, confirming. One of the very first notes I ever wrote down when I started this job was call, exclamation mark. That was just the first thing I noticed from my boss, was just you're calling constantly. The more communication you have, the better. Because if you set a date and you don't talk to the guy or girl for 3 weeks, there's no chance they're showing up. They've forgotten it. So you got to call, confirm.
That'd be tough to do with a full-time job.
Yes. So for me, I also have to be careful because I don't mix any outside work with my full-time job. So I'm actually off I'm not working until about 5 p.m. Sometimes before 7, sometimes after 5. But so again, luckily I was consulting on this project, so the other guys were able to take the lead. I would just ensure the steps are being followed. I was laying out the protocol and the procedure, and they were able to just follow it.
Right. Now, how often should someone be on site? Every day?
If you can, you're on site every day. Some investors I know, they actually moved into the house next door, and that's why it's been beneficial to them doing their build, because, I mean, they're there every day. You wake up, you need to make sure the guy's on site. One resource we've been using is the Nest camera. So that way you can see the exterior. So at 7:15, you see a truck pull up, perfect. You know the guy's there. Whereas if you don't have eyes on site, they may say they come, they may say they're there, but who knows? Maybe they're at Tim Hortons down the road. But you should be on site every single day.
Right.
I mean, unless there's no trades on site.
Right. And also having the Nest on site, that allowed you to track when materials grew legs and walked away.
Yeah. Well, we didn't tell anyone specifically that the camera was there. But we had some insulation delivered, and I was scanning the camera one day and just noticed someone back up. They were dumping some garbage in the bin, which is 100% normal. If you have a bin sitting out front of your house, you have to expect people are going to dump illegally. It's part of the game. But then we see someone pulling up their truck to the front of the house, pulling out a couple bags of rock salt. It actually ended up being our laborer that we hired. His old boss, I guess he somehow connected with him, told him to come by, and stole about $200 worth of insulation. Fortunately, it was only $200 worth of insulation, because things on site cost a lot more. So we called him out on it. We gave him a couple opportunities to kind of fess to it. On the third time, we kind of told him, listen, we have the camera. So he was able to get some of the stuff back. One of the bags the guy used, so it was a write-off. But you have to expect theft. But by cameras and other tools, you can kind of help prevent it.
Right. So for the listeners' benefit, because the owners, Andy and Steve, they owned the adjacent properties. One of them operates as an Airbnb, so they had Wi-Fi available for the Nest to operate off of. But if you don't have this ability, because you own the adjacent properties, I just learned Bell actually has cameras that you can buy. So they run off cellular service for data. They run around $15 a month in case anyone needs another solution. But it's per unit though, right? Say you want them all in your camera, inside the property. Like how many of them do you need?
Yeah, I would stick with one or at least two. One covering the front door and one covering the back door.
Right. Exactly.
So.
Yeah, that's a great, that's a tip you can't find in a book.
But no, we've been very successful with Violet. Like you said, you were there. You saw the upper units. They're
gorgeous.
Done.
Well done.
Tenants, thank you. Tenants moved in the upper unit last Saturday. They've rented out 3 of the 4 units, so everyone's moving in within the next month or so.
Fantastic. Can you share rents?
It's Upper units, it's 3-bedroom, semi. So they're in the, I think it's the 1990 range plus utilities, and the basement's in the, I think the $1,400 range, or like 1390 plus utilities. And because we did all separate utilities, we have a furnace for the upper unit, we have a furnace for the lower unit, we have 2 separate gas meters, we have 2 separate hydrometers, so all the utilities can be charged directly to the tenant. As investors, like I own a duplex myself, and my rents are all in, which I hate because if the toilet runs too long, if they take advantage of long showers, stuff like that, it's on my dime. So the one thing we really wanted to focus on was building these houses for investors, and as investors, we know we want to try to split the utilities the best we can.
Same for the water. Can the tenant put the water in their names?
So you can only bring one water line to the property. However, once it's into the basement, we've added a sub meter. So you're able to actually, you'll get one water bill, but you'll be easily able to go down to the basement, read the meter, and take it away, and then charge it to the respectable tenants.
Right. Is that available in existing properties?
Yeah, you can. You really can. The brand is Neptune, and they make water meters. The city uses big ones, and at any point. Now, that being said, you have to revamp your basement plumbing. So if you're doing a basement conversion, you're going to have to run new plumbing pipes, just to
split it up.
You have to split it up. Yeah, so that's the only thing. But that being said, there's enough people doing these basement conversions. You have the drywall open. So to run a little bit of new plumbing, a couple $1,000s maybe. But if it's going to be a long-term hold, it's worth the cost up front.
Nice. Neptune, folks.
Neptune. The meters themselves are, I think, about $300-400.
And you're thinking a couple $1,000 for the work that needs to be done?
Depends what needs to be done. But a lot of people like to upgrade their basements, or sometimes it's required to. Some older houses have like a 1/2-inch water line running, or 3/4, and they have to upgrade it to 1 inch.
Folks who are newer to home construction, Steve's saying that you have to, the water supply line has to be traceable, what goes to the upstairs, what goes to the basement. That's why you need some plumbing work done.
Right.
Because normally the house wasn't designed that way, with having to do to separate the two. Same thing with electrical. Electrical was never was when it was originally done. It was done for whatever was the easiest, rather than trying to separate between upstairs and downstairs. This is all fascinating stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing I find myself, I'm surrounded by construction. If I'm not at work building houses, I'm building houses after work, or if I'm at home or watching HGTV. So my entire life is surrounded by house.
Right.
So when I talk about things, I don't realize necessarily how much I know, or how much more I know than the average person.
And just to paint a picture for the listener, and also anyone watching, because we're not showing pictures of the property. Actually, you guys send me pictures I can share with this episode. I have some. Anyways.
Yeah, actually, you have that link. Yeah.
I have some video as well. I'll post it to my Instagram so folks can have a look. So your apartments don't exist anywhere else that I've seen. For example, your upstairs unit is 3-bedroom. Master has an ensuite.
Yeah.
With a stand-up shower. So we usually and a pretty fair-sized walk-in closet.
Yeah, it's huge. Yeah. Like, these houses we're building are better than our own. But they're high quality. Yeah. I mean, you have granite in the kitchen. Even the basement units are going to have stone countertops. We're building them specifically for, say, our avatar tenant, or our and that's going to be your higher end tenant. And that's what these houses are designed for.
And then the basement is just over 600 square feet?
Yeah, actually in St. Catharines, you're only allowed up to 650 square feet of a basement unit. Yeah. These are like 604, and that's not including the mechanical room where the laundry is.
Right.
But upstairs is 1750, downstairs unit is 600, and 9-foot ceilings in the basement. So you're paying a premium for your formwork, because they have to bring in specialized forms, a little more concrete. It's a little more work, but it's actually helped substantially, especially with the mechanical. One thing basements are known for is low ceilings. So we did still end up with bulkheads, and luckily, because we used 9-foot foundation walls, it's obviously helped hiding some of these mechanical.
Right. So for the listeners' benefit, like your upstairs rent is the highest I've heard of. Yeah, almost $2,000 plus all utilities, and then your basement per square foot rent is the highest I've heard of.
Right.
All right. So sounds like
and there is not one question on the price.
Yeah, and they rented pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, probably within 6 weeks, probably.
I think it was less than that.
Yeah. So
maybe 6 weeks from when you started advertising to move.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I don't include that time. I'm talking about like when you had like when you started showing to when you had leases signed, and they all happened pretty quick.
No, that all happened within 4 weeks for sure.
Right. And actually, you rented the basements without them being complete.
Yeah, well, that's what we need to just due to the way we built. Actually, I'll talk a little bit about the development charges.
Sure.
Actually city helped us with this. Had we have gone for all 4 units on the same permit at the same time, it was going to be about $22,000 or $24,000 more than if we go for the upper units with an unfinished basement. And then once we pass the final occupancy inspection for the upper units, we then apply for a separate permit for the basement units. And it just comes down to the city's development fees. And it's just obviously if you're building 2 houses, it's less than if you're building 4 units. So it's just incrementally transitioning from a single family to a duplex. So that's why we had to get the upper part of the house done. You had to get everything 100% complete, ready to move in, get the inspector through, pass the occupancy, and then we were able to get the permit for the basement. So that's added to the timeline of the build. We're taping the drywall now, and we're hoping to have it done in the next 3 weeks.
And then what else do people need to watch out for? Because I remember in your last presentation at my group, you guys were talking about distance from service and then how that affects your costs. So can you explain services, first of all, servicing a property?
Well, it was actually between the different municipalities, and it bit us a little bit in our new Hamilton project, but we kind of so the cost of running the services. So services. You're going to build a new house. You need to get water there, and you need to get sewer to come out of there. So you actually have to get the city to be able to run new sewer lines, to run new water lines from the street to your property line. So that's what I say your outside services, that's from the street to your property line. And then inside you're responsible for from your property line into the house. But, so in St. Catharines, it ended up being about $15,000, so about $7,500 each unit to get the services to the property line. Whereas transition to Hamilton, the fees are substantially higher. The final tally, we got a quote as high as $88,000, which is just crazy. But we finalized in the $45,000 range, so almost 2.5 times St. Catharines. So we kind of assumed, or we presumed, that the services were going to be similar to St. Catharines. So right away, that's why you have to have a contingency fund to make up for errors on your part.
Right.
But so knowing the municipality, knowing where you're building, knowing some of these substantial costs, are they going to be different?
Right. And know these things before buying the property.
Absolutely.
Can you talk to your Hamilton property at all?
So it hasn't finalized the sale yet, but we're working with a friend who we're looking to buy the lot off of.
All right.
So it's a vacant lot. It's actually a tiny lot. It's only 50 feet wide by 40 feet deep. And our intention is to build a 3-story semi-detached. There's a similar one across the road. So it was a similar lot they already built. So we were able to use those plans, get them from the old builder, and transition to the lot that we want to build on. And so the development charges in Hamilton actually go up pretty substantially across the board between single family to row houses to commercial to industrial. They're going up a good, I think about 20-30%. So we're trying to beat the date of July 6th to get our permits, because it's an extra, say, $15,000 to $20,000 if we don't get our permits submitted by July 6th. So there's all these little things that you have to watch out for. You have to be on top of your game.
Yeah.
You have to have an insider understanding of development.
Right. And in this vacant lot deal, you knew the seller beforehand.
Right. So
our multiple offer pressures on. You have 8 hours to submit an offer type thing.
I went through that a couple days ago at a property down in Thorold.
Oh yeah, Saturday. Friday.
Taking bids. Oh yeah, you were with Charles there.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw the video on Saturday.
Yeah, should we buy it? It's a good price. It has a nice lot, but we didn't get a chance to see it. There's a lot of pressure, and when it gets to that point, that's an easy way to just walk away. There's lots of deals out there. There's no reason to jump into something when you don't have all the information on it.
Right.
But so the one in Hamilton, our friend actually got it at a bank sale for a decent price, kind of by accident. He just threw his numbers in. He beat the guy by about like $1,000 or something.
Right.
And he's been working on it, getting it developed. So he's actually put about a year's worth of work, because it does take time, to getting it developed into ready for permit. Mm-hmm. So this is kind of where we can jump in as having the construction background, where he has more of a background in multifamily. So he wants
renovations,
and renovations, and restoration. So he wants to walk away from the construction part, but this is where we can jump in, and this is where we can hopefully have a successful build. And our goal being having it, we were hoping to have it underway basically July, if it gets pushed to August potentially, but hopefully having it wrapped up early 2020.
Awesome.
Yes. So it goes quick. It's because it's in Hamilton. It's 3 stories, and there's only room for 1 parking. There's no opportunity to put a secondary suite in. Overall, we'd love to do that into all of our builds, but in this scenario, it's not possible, especially with the Hamilton bylaws. But so this build, because it doesn't have the secondary suite, we should be able to wrap it up in the 6 to 7 month range.
I'm shaking my head because I'm a bit of a socialist,
right?
And I've been ranting for a while. The biggest winner of you guys doing the infill is not you guys as the investor. The biggest winner is the city,
right?
They get to collect property taxes. So just think from if you're a business, someone else is doing all the work, putting up all the risk, doing all the investment, putting in all the sweat equity and real equity, and then as the city, you get to collect probably about $3,500 for each semi,
and that's not
year.
Including the development charges
including development charges, and and it cost me almost nothing to make that money.
Yeah.
For the rest of the time.
Yeah.
Good business to be a city.
Great business, getting paid and other people do the work.
Yeah.
But so it's a shame.
But it's not enough though. They upped the development charge too.
They did, because those evil, greedy developers. But the problem is that they're pricing out the small time guys, and the ones that have the capital, the large volume guys, are the ones that are going to succeed. Right. The development charges, they get passed right on to the home buyer, and there's some education that needs to happen to realize that the higher the development charges are, the house prices, they're just going to hide it in the house price. So it's kind of doing the opposite of what they're intending it to do. But in the meantime, they're going to price out the small guys, and we're not going to be able to afford. It's not going to be worth it to build 1, 2, 3 houses. Right. You're going to have to do the 10, 20, 30, which obviously is a substantial capital compared to building 1 house.
Right. Because you could have, and with this subject property in Hamilton, instead of 2 units, it could be 4.
Right.
Well, so there's 4 families could have homes instead of 2.
Yeah.
On the same piece of land.
Yeah. So you're creating 4 new units for 4 different families. Mm-hmm. It's in the core of Hamilton, so the walkability is fantastic. So the people moving into some of these units wouldn't necessarily need a car. Mm-hmm. So the one reason we can't have this unit is because they're saying they need a car.
Yeah. And also, because I have some context for your property, it's actually downtown. It's basically downtown.
Basically, it is. Yeah. So you could walk to work if you work in the core.
Or you could walk to LRT when we have LRT.
Absolutely.
And there's lots of bus service.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate, but I mean, things are hopefully changing that way. Mm-hmm. But for this year, it's not going to happen.
Right. And for the listener to have context, the city of Toronto is actually very progressive in this way. You can get minor variances approved quite easily, from my understanding, if you can just make the simple argument that you're close to transit.
Right.
And so if we moved your property and its distance to transit, to Hamilton, you would likely be able to get your duplex.
I'm sure we would be able to.
Yeah.
The city of Toronto is also a lot more open to new things like the carriage houses or the laneway houses. They're allowing people to build those lots now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Hamilton's progressive on that too. They're
getting there.
There's not that many laneways really.
Right. Not as much.
They should just focus more effort on the rest of the stuff. 80-20 principle. They went after like the less than 1% principle. Right. Let's get these laneway houses approved.
Yeah.
Screw these easy projects.
We have another one that actually, so I know everything about kind of shovel in the ground and onward, but the one thing I've been learning the last couple of years is kind of what happens before the shovel. Mm-hmm. So there's a new property we purchased. We put an offer in New Year's Eve. Mm-hmm. So it actually closed in February. So I think it was February 15th. Mm-hmm. So we're about 4 or 5 months in, and we're still not at the approval stage. We're trying to sever the lot and build a semi-detached, similar to what we did on Violet there. But on Wednesday is our committee of adjustments meeting. So this is where we're going to find out whether the neighbors are for it or against it. Do they even care? The city put up about 5 giant signs on our corner lot. Honestly, more than double what I've ever seen. But it's going to be interesting. So this is some of the stuff we had to go through the design review panel, and what that is they want a committee to approve your design, your streetscape. So are they happy with the height of the building? Do they want the garages on the interior or the outside of the house? So they get to kind of agree or disagree, or put a motion forward to pass or to approve or deny your design. So we had to go back to it twice, but they were speaking on things they shouldn't have been speaking on. Again, they're concerned about the appearance or the streetscape, mm-hmm. But they were pushing some density issues, which it's my understanding that they shouldn't have been discussing. But all in all, we did get it passed, or we got the approval. I think it was like a 4 yes, 3 no vote. So we got the approval for that. But again, some of this stuff you never even hear of until you actually go through this process. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. We've gone through that. We go to the committee of adjustments on Wednesday, and we'll see what the outcome is.
Right.
So this is why we need to make sure we have a plan A, B, C, D. Because if this were to get denied, then okay, it's back to the drawing board. Maybe we're not going to go for a semi-detached. Is it possible to do a single and still be profitable? It's hard. Worst case, you have this single family home. It almost cash flows, whether you hold on to it, whether you can clean it up and rent it out for hire, or you clean it up and sell it. So we do have a lot of options. With the main option, obviously, severing the lot and building a semi-detached.
Right. And then one option as well is just to sever it and then sell the lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So folks, keep that in mind. You don't have to necessarily do all the work to do the build.
Right.
I just want to take a second just to thanks everyone for watching. Jason, Alan, Tammy, Laura.
Hey guys.
If anyone wants to throw a question in the comments, I am monitoring it. That's what I'm looking down for, in case you didn't know. I'm looking down at my phone to see folks commenting. I had a question. I forget what it was. I had more of a statement.
Yeah.
It actually seems as if one of the almost you can almost argue that the biggest opposition to housing affordability is the NIMBYs, is the people that live where the people who live there, wherever there is, wherever you're trying to build, are the people who are your biggest opponents to housing affordability.
Because it's confusing too, because you're going to some of these older neighborhoods and you're actually increasing the value of their home.
Yeah.
But not everyone appreciates that. Everybody's terrified of change.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going in, creating another lot. Yes, some of the lots are smaller, but there's less of a demand for lot. There's more of a demand for square footage of a house.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, you're making your neighbor's house more valuable. But it depends on the neighborhood. The nicer the neighborhood, or the more upscale the neighborhood, the more I think NIMBYism you're going to get. Whereas some other areas, people don't even bother going to City Hall or even care where City Hall is.
Right. And then to the counterpoint to that is even though you're raising the property values, people are fear and partly correct is their property taxes will go up as well, and they don't want that.
Right.
But again, I'll just say it, but the greater good is for more supply. The greater good for everyone to have more housing affordability is to have more supply.
Right. There's a shortage of housing, a shortage of rentals. I'm currently trying to place some tenants in my rental, and the amount of requests on Kijiji or Facebook is just, I probably had 50, 60 different people asking, is it available? So the demand's there, which obviously means there's a shortage of these rentals.
Yep. I saw a friend posted on Facebook recently, a duplex in Waterloo. They had 4 parties show up ahead of time and 4 parties show up immediately after for one unit. There's 8 people looking for a unit. Right. So it's like, it's everywhere.
Right. And then, so mine was in Brantford, which there's a lot of houses being built, especially in West Brantford, but they're being filled just one after the other.
So Laurie May Paroff comments, my experience is that neighbors they want more housing. Don't know how much they want it, but they perceive it to bring more traffic. They do not want more traffic. But again, it's,
it depends on depends on what you're doing. Yes, if you're building a 10 unit townhouse, then you're going to be bringing 10 new families in there. Are you building a single family? It's not that it's increasing the traffic to much of an extent. And it depends on which type of road you're on. Are you on an avenue, or are you on a busy street already? Is it going to make a difference? Right. But yeah, that's definitely one of those battles where you'll go into these meetings and you may have thought of all the potential issues that might come up, and someone's going to throw something in that you may not have planned for.
Right. So Steve, what are some of the common questions that you're being asked?
Number one,
because you are kind of famous. You get out of the blue questions, just completely unsolicited.
Well, the number one is, what is the cost per square foot?
Okay, love it.
But that is number one. But it's not necessarily a question you can answer, because there's so many variables. Number one, location. Are you putting the time on site yourself? Are you hiring a builder? That is the number one question I get asked, and the number one question I do not answer. Because it's going to be so different, no matter where you are.
And just interrupt, shout out to Tony Miller. It's like asking someone what's the cap rate.
Right. It depends. Or is it
depends on the inputs,
the city or the neighborhood or it's one of those questions.
It's a very loaded question.
Very loaded. It depends on your finishings. Do you want granite? Do you want arborite countertops? Right. Do you want hardwood or laminate?
But you're building to a high rental standard.
Correct.
You mentioned granite countertops.
Right.
But I know like you guys are savvy investors. You're going to like Home Depot and you're buying very nice vanities on clearance.
Right. There's things like that if you're building at a small scale, you can do.
Yeah,
You can't do that if you're building 3, 5, 10 units, because we're only building for, I guess it was 4 units. We were able to play that game a little bit. It does not work in production construction. You want to keep things as simple as possible. You want to have as few changes as possible. At certain stages of construction, you have to agree that there's going to be no more changes. You're not moving walls down the road. It's not a custom home. It's a production home. Because what you do with house number 1, it really affects house number 2, 3, 4, 5. So you want to limit the amount of changes.
Can you share what ranges that you're within for the style of your construction that you're doing? So you're involved. Folks have hired a construction manager like yourself.
Yeah.
And then my understanding is a lot of people exclude, not necessarily by accident. Sometimes they're not aware, but they often exclude like servicing,
right.
utility servicing the lot.
Well,
they often forget about that when they're trying to
completely. Yeah. And that's a $15,000-$20,000 cost. So it's substantial. And so some people have different understanding of what soft costs are and what hard costs are. Based on our interpretation of what hard costs are. And that's again, basically from site servicing on. If you're using a builder, you're hiring, say, a local builder, it could be anywhere from the 180, 190 range to the 250 range, depending on your finishing. In Toronto, houses are being built for 300 plus range. But outside of the city in, say, St. Catharines or Brantford or something like that, yeah, if you're hiring a builder, it's going to be between the very low and you'd be very lucky and I'd be concerned, like the 180. But I would expect if you're hiring a builder, you're the 2 to 220 range.
Right. And then to give some folks some context, if you're building like a high-end custom home, like 3,000, 4,000 square feet.
Right. You're in the easy 300 a square foot.
Dude, I was hearing 400 to 500 being thrown around.
Yeah. If you're doing in-floor heating, if you're doing all climate control rooms, depending on what you're building. Like I said, it's such a loaded question that there's no right or wrong answer to.
Depending on the city. Because if you're in a high-end city, like a Vaughan or an Oakville,
well, I'm in North York
charge
right now.
Yeah, North York, they're going to charge.
That's your 400 or 500 a square foot, but those are 6,000 square beasts.
Yeah. I had a friend who was quoted for modular home, tax in 400, modular home, 400 a square foot.
Wow.
For a modular home.
Right.
Because it was North York.
Right. Well, you got to take advantage of the address, I guess.
It's like, holy cow. I can't wait to see it so I can live vicariously through him and his spending.
There you go. Easiest thing to do is if you've severed your lot, you're working towards your building permit, is setting your drawings out for price. Get it quoted by 3 or 4 different builders. That's where you're going to get a more accurate price.
Right.
So that's where you can decide,
is that the appropriate way to approach you as well for hire? To send you?
Well, at this point, just because of my own projects, I'm not necessarily taking on any clients.
We should just cancel this call now. Sorry, folks.
I'm happy to help with some questions, but
don't say that. Here it comes.
No. If you see me at any events or any meetings or at the iWin meetings, I'm happy to answer any questions. But because we all started out somewhere, and I've definitely taken advantage of some people with experience. So I think it's important to ask questions. And a lot of the times I got off a call this afternoon where a guy I met at, I think it was your last event, he called me up and I think I'm going to go check out he's renovating a sixplex down in Hamilton. So some of this stuff, I get to put myself in some places that I wouldn't necessarily see. So I get to find some new problems to solve. So I actually don't mind kind of spending my time out there because I'm learning. So I like to take advantage of it, and it's a win-win because if I can help them out, I'm happy to help them out.
Okay. Is there anything you can share in terms of how folks can follow up? Don't share your email address, please.
Like I said, the best thing is if they can visit actually www.infilldevelopments.com, they can sign up for our newsletter. We're going to be releasing some infill development tips, some emails, just some frequently asked questions. You can register on there, and that's probably the best way to get in touch or to kind of stay in the loop in regards to development.
Excellent. One more time, infilldevelopments.com?
That's correct.
Excellent. And then you're coming July 25th, our next meeting? I noticed you were absent our last meeting.
Yeah, I apologize for that. But yeah, I'll be there.
Excellent. That should be a good meeting. So, folks, and just a general lesson on good networking. Steve makes a good money in his job. His time is very expensive. So don't pound don't IM him.
I don't mind.
Lists of questions.
No, I don't mind. I'm happy to help.
But he is. If you want to see him in person, he is reliably at the IM meetings.
Right. Yeah. No, I frequently attend, and I'm frequently a listener of your podcast, Erwin.
Okay. So, all right, let's leave it there because we're way over time. Steve, awesome. Thanks so much for this.
No, thanks, Erwin.
Like I said from the beginning of the show, even off camera, you're like a black belt in this.
Thank you.
And there's not many people that have your level of knowledge, and I think a lot of investors who want to get into developments, they need someone like you. So hopefully you can refer them to somebody because you're kind of like a key component to getting one of these projects done properly.
Right.
And also just to give folks some context, if you've been in and around the GTA, it's a very common strategy for someone to tear down a house on a 50-foot lot and build two semis.
Yeah.
Right. And that will likely come to almost everywhere within an hour of Toronto, within 90 minutes of Toronto. So this is a strategy that folks need to pay attention to, and you likely need someone like a Steve on your team. So hopefully Steve can build a database of Steves.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Rowan. I appreciate your time.
No, thank you. Thank you, Steve.